Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Artur Rehi podcast. A podcast when we upload 1 or 2 episodes a week, and we have incredibly awesome guests. Like today, we have Georgi or Georgi from the channel Ukraine Matters. Welcome, Georgi.
Tere Artur, Tere chat. Nice to see you all. This is,
I
I
wasn't
guess,
ready for you hitting me with my own, welcome. Tere, tere. Yeah.
there is the two words that you must know if you ever interact with Estonians. It's tere, which is obvious, and whenever you're interacting in a bar, it's like terviseks. So
Oh
that's a
yeah,
must have.
the cheers, tervisex. Oh, why does it have sex in it? Oh my god.
Yeah. It's,
But Georgi or Georgis, right? S in
Georgis.
the end,
Yeah.
because you are from Latvia, and Estonia and Latvia are Baltics very close together, and we were just talking about that how Estonians and Latvians don't really talk to each other.
I mean, we're talking right now, so I guess we do sometimes, like that. That's a proven fact in the world right now. But overall, yes, we can say that after the Soviet Union kind of collapsed, and I think at that point when we stopped feeling the pressure of the economic growth within our area being forced to be like, we need to develop together. Once we joined the European Union, it was like, oh, we're in the union already, so we're not really forced to interact with each other anymore. And we kind of went on to our own different paths. Yeah.
It's so weird. Like Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, all like considered by the world these small Baltic states that are like one block of nations, but we're not. No, we're three different nations, three different cultures almost, and we kind of don't speak to each other. I'm closer to you usually. I mean, closer to Latvia than I'm to any other country in the world, and still no communication.
Yeah, but that is just also something that's going to be interesting if we can slowly transition also maybe to talk about what people usually watch my channel for
Yeah,
is my comment and perspective on the war is that this whole perspective of Ukraine resisting Russian aggression has also brought a whole spotlight on how different European cultures are and how it's perceived in the Western hemisphere over the past, I think this half a year, just over maybe 9 months, like this the war kind of progressed. People that I know of, both in the Western world and in other countries that were like maybe not part of the Western world, but they were close enough, like Mexico and so on. They were reflecting on what do they even know about the Eastern Europe, right? Because for a lot of people, for a lot of time when I was growing up, Eastern Europe was this blob of things that is happening. There was like Germany ends, and then like
yeah.
the big question mark is there. It's like it's there.
Like only
Something is
funny
happening.
videos come out of it.
Yeah. And there is Russia, and there is like that's it. So it's like there's Russia and everything. And I think during this kind of past half a year, there was a huge reflection about what do they even know. Like a lot of people I actually talk to here in Denmark, there is like I would love to comment on a lot of things that I see here happening in Ukraine. But at some point, I just realized I don't even know what is happening. I don't even know anything about the Baltics. It was not a part of our culture program. It's only essentially this year I discovered that a lot of Estonian culture is actually it comes from Danish culture. For them, it was like
Yeah,
for example, the only part that they knew about Estonia was that there is where the Denmark got its flag. It's like similar
yeah.
flag to this, except that there's also a cross.
You know the story, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, every day
Amazing
knows the
story.
story. But a lot of people didn't reflect on it. It's like we didn't know. That was the point. So
Yeah, just to clarify, Ukraine Matters, channel link is in the description below, and I've watched your channel. You make almost semi-daily updates about Ukrainian war, and usually you focus on these maps and detailed look about where the front line moves. So it's a really, really good watching eye candy. I recommend you go and subscribe.
I mean, you should subscribe. You should subscribe to Artur, to the Artur Rehi podcast, and to the Artur Rehi main channel if you are not yet.
This
That's
back
just
and forth. But
it's a must have that. So
yeah, you're totally correct because so many things. Like I'm next to Russia, I feel myself like a Slavic soul. I am Estonian fully, but my temperament is very Slavic. I'm very, like that. So I figured I know what's going on in Russia. I know Russian people. I know Ukrainian people. But if this war progresses, and I see, and I must admit, before the war, I kind of put Russians and Ukrainians in the same boat. I did that, but now, no, definitely not.
I mean, it wouldn't be wrong for a long time to put. I mean, like putting it in same both would kind of be a way to put it. And I'm instantly saying sorry to all of my
Yeah.
Ukrainian friends. I'm very much generalizing here. But what I wanted to say is that even in Ukraine, there would basically tell to you that yes, for a longer time, it was considered that Russian and Ukrainian people were very brotherly nations. And I know that there are some people that are objecting to it, but hear me out. At least there was this mythos that was in the air, and there were part of a society within Ukraine and very much also in both Eastern Europe, and I'm not even touching on the Western world, that thought that we were all the same anyway. What I'm saying is that there was some kind of idea like that flown around. And I think
Hmm.
2013, 2014, and even before the Orange Revolution just showed just how very different Ukrainians and Russians are in their desire for freedom, their desire to have ability to direct their own future in life. And I think this is just something that was completely unbelievable to see over after Maidan revolution, because during Maidan it was the first kind of spark. Like we in Latvia, we have this mythos of awakening. We have said that the Latvian nation had three waves of awakening that brought the Latvian nation to become as it is. And in Ukrainian culture, this was also something that I saw, that after the Soviet Union collapsed, it felt that they kind of didn't get over, like a lot of mythos was still about the fact that we are still kind of together and so on. And then around 2014, that's when I started following. So like people that were following closely or were Ukrainian earlier, they would say, no, 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 we actually were so different from the Russian from all the times. Yes, but I'm talking about myself, so take it with a grain of salt. And in
Hmm.
2014, I saw the wave of awakening for the
Hmm.
Ukrainian nation. That is when I saw, it's like, okay, they are completely. It was funny because this is also kind of corresponded with about a couple of years or a year ago, that was the big protest in Russia. I think it was called Bolotna Square protest. It was one of the biggest protests in Russia. And that's when we saw that the Russians didn't do any kind of actions, that they were just standing there, and then the police came up, riled them up, and that's it. And they never
Yeah.
fought for what happened for their future. And obviously now there is about 1,001 excuses why Russians don't fight for their freedom or their desire. But the point is, there were two kind of big protests that were happening around the same time between Russia and Ukrainians really took the chance. They really figured out that their nation needs an awakening. And I think Russian nation is still yet to be awakened from that kind of passivity and slumber.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You said Latvia had three awakenings. I know Estonia had one in the end of the 1890s to 1900s. That was the first one. That was the national awakening. And then 1991, when Soviet Union collapsed, that was the second awakening. We had singing revolution, people doing the Baltic way. What was it? 3 million people connecting hands over three Baltic states, something like that, and that was in the 90s. And I think Ukraine had that in 2014, like just a generation later.
Yeah, yeah, very much. And I mean, this is then the war. I don't think anyone expected the war. Like, I know obviously people now reflecting, like people rationalize, they're looking back, they said, okay, US is actually said that there's going to be a war all the time. They've been sending all of these reports, they've been saying it all out loud. And people looking at the history books or like even looking at what was happening back then, they say
Hmm.
like, why is everyone so fucking dumb? Like, why is everyone could not just see that of course there's going to be a war? And it's very different from when it was in the moment. When you see it's like, no, Ukraine and Russia going to war. Yes, of course there is tension, but going to full on like warfare, like 21st century warfare with like massive invasions from all sides. Nah, like Putin is just posturing. Like he's just trying to get his power position, trying to pressure the NATO and so on. Nah, he would do that. And then he did, and it's blew everyone's mind open.
It's so weird. I know most of the populace thinks like that, and I thought like that at least, but For some reason, I don't know what, I followed very closely what Biden was doing, and I go back on my videos I did yesterday to go to March and February and then January, and I looked that I posted like 2 days ago before they invaded, like, when will it happen is the title, and it's Russia and Ukraine. And in that video, I'm like, okay, it's gonna happen any day now. Because for some reason, I took Biden's Biden's warnings very seriously. I don't know why, because I guess I went with it. But yeah, honestly, most of the people in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, I would say, didn't think it would happen. Nobody was ready for it.
I think even people that thought that it might happen, they were still not even expecting just the scale of it.
True, yeah.
Because one thing is expecting, like, gotta say, I also was expecting that it's going to be an invasion, but I was thinking it's going to be a local conflict. I was thinking that the only thing that Putin wants is connect land bridge Crimea to Donbass, maybe push Ukrainians out of Donbass completely, because they were. At the moment, I realized that this is going to happen when they said that they are recognizing the republics as independent states. At that moment, okay, which borders? And it was a difference. If it's the actual borders that they're currently having, or this is the administrative borders that also parts of them Ukraine control, because that is the direct conflict.
And a few days before after they recognized, they brought their armor into these new republics. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So they recognized it. They recognized it in the borders of the full, in the full of the administrative regions in Ukraine, and they started bringing it armor. And that's so on. But the first kind of wind was like when they were starting deploying hospitals on the areas around Ukraine. That was going to also a lot of military analysts that I already then started following. They were like, "Yeah, why would you deploy hospitals if you're not planning to invade? Like en masse, not just a little bit of hospitals, but like literally en masse, with bringing in blood supplies into them."
But how weird is that, like, they deployed hospitals, that is sign to the Western world that they're going to invade, and now they invaded, and turns out they didn't have enough hospitals. They should have had more, like, yeah. They weren't ready for the death toll.
I think they were ready enough for the like, what is it, 3-day campaign? Like,
Yeah.
in 3 days you take Kyiv, in like the next 2 days you leave Lviv, and then in the other 2 days you just mop up whatever is left, celebrate and put on a parade in Kyiv.
And we know what, like, they had this, I guess, 3 days of war, and then celebrate in the Russian way of celebration, 1 week of drinking. So
Exactly, it's like 50% work, 50% drinking.
and we talked about Ukrainian and Russian people's difference. That is one of the difference. Ukrainian people are very hardworking, actually. And
I was very surprised. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't want to, like, say bad things about Russian people. I can't generalize like that, but a work culture, work ethic in Russia is very different than in Ukraine.
Well, that is a topic that I'm completely, like, I'm very far away. I've never been to Russia. Well, I think maybe I've been brought to Russia one time when it was the Soviet Union and like passing by, but I don't really remember it.
Hasn't changed much.
Yeah, and I have no idea what's their work culture is and so on. It's very different from, because I know that we have also Russians in Latvia. We have a huge community.
Yeah, that is why I can't generalize. I mean, we have Russians in Estonia who are doctors, lawyers, producers. I mean, you cannot generalize. But how to say this without offending like 150 million people? I don't know.
I don't know. Like,
Dangerous topics.
If they don't want to get offended, why don't they start acting like they shouldn't be? Like I have a good proposal.
Dropping some shade here, man.
I mean, like, I've been very, very open in my channel, like what I'm for and so on. What I'm saying is, like, if for example, Russian soldiers, people very much commented on my channel very often says, like, Georgie, why are you like treating, like, disrespecting Russian soldiers? Why are you saying like they're orcs and they're like they should be all killed or destroyed, whatever? I said, if a person decides that it's okay that rather than breaking his own, like, arm, leg, whatever, instead to take up arm and go kill civilians, go kill Ukrainians that did nothing to them, and go invade some other country, that makes that person an enemy of democracy, that makes this person an enemy of a civil population and a war criminal. So for me, there is absolutely no difference once they cross the Ukrainian border who they are, what's their backstory, how pity should we are if they thought that there was just a training exercise. By this point now in a war, there is completely no possible right for them to just say, okay, I just didn't know or whatever. That is out of the window. And as for people inside of Russia, well, the argument of why they're not protesting is still there. Whenever people says that oh, but they cannot protest, but because they're just gonna get beaten up and sent out. Well, let's look at the facts. So we see that people in Iran are protesting. Okay, so that's the first comparison. Second comparison, we see that they are protesting. For example, we've seen plenty of videos of mobilized troops are protesting that they don't have enough good equipment. Did they got beaten up?
What pisses me off is the fact that they're protesting that they don't have good equipment to go and commit war crimes, not that they're protesting that they have to go to war. They are like okay with this war as long as they're giving you equipment and good food.
Yeah. And people have been saying to me, it's like, oh, Georgie, you don't understand. It's because you're demanding way too much. You're being too demanding. People are fucking dying. It's like, it's 9 months of killing innocents in Ukraine. Like, and you're I'm demanding. Like, every day this war goes on is not enough. I'm going to be demanding 110% of everything. So whenever people are saying, it's like, okay, they're just, trying to build resistance inside themselves. This is an actual quote that I'm saying. People on the Russian media are saying is like they need to educate themselves in how to resist the government. They are growing as an internal personality, like this nice description. And then they will kind of express it in a way that they can, because otherwise they get punished. And then I see them, like, for example, anonymously being presented on the some kind of there is a opposition channel. It was called, I think, Dost. It's based in Riga, Latvia. It was an interesting experiment. I'm not sure if it's going to work out. We can touch on it later. And then they anonymously come out on the program and they anonymously say, it's like, how can we go kill people if we do not have enough weapons? Like, that is his argument when he's speaking anonymously on the television. He's not saying...
It's not saying we shouldn't go. He's saying that we cannot kill because we don't have equipment. Like, I've made this argument on my main channel, and I cannot use the words you use because I've gotten so much punished for it. And I made the same argument, and people punished me for it in the comments. Like, oh, as you said, like sugarcoating it. Oh, they give them time. They need this time to process. They're going to jail. Well, Iranian police has shot over 450 people in the past 2 months of the protests, and they're still out on the streets. There's no excuses in my eyes.
No, absolutely not. Like, because I've seen already, like, during my lifetime, I've seen plenty of revolutions happening and so on, starting with Ukrainians, the Iran stuff, and so on. There is always ways. There's always ways to resist, and I've not seen that. We talked a little bit about the awakenings in the Baltics. Mm-hmm. This is what I'm missing so far from the Russian population, right? We're giving them so much credit for, it's like, oh my God, you poor souls, you're living in this awful, awful regime, and whatever can you do? Resist. It's like, resist. That's what you do.
That's what the Ukrainians did, and they died in 2014 on the streets of Maidan. They died in that square. People, there were stories of Russian paid, Wagner snipers shooting at the crowds. They died on that stage, on that Maidan square, withholding the Ukrainian flag. I don't see Russians doing that.
So yeah, that's kind of rounding up the question and the topic that we discussed. I have a lot of things to say about the Russian culture and that they're not doing enough and so on. And I'm getting a lot of shit for it. Like, people giving a lot of credit for Russia. But I'm not going to stop, because until the last Ukrainian is going to stop dying, it's never going to be enough. So my goal is to make sure that people that did not deserve this war, that did not ask for it, the civilians, the population, the infrastructure, anything, until the war is stopped, whatever Russian is doing is not enough. Every single one of them. And I know that a lot of people were saying, it's like, what about Russian bloggers? And it's like, fair enough. They're trying to do their competences. So I'm giving them credit. But as you expressed a lot, for example, you talked about the blogger, which is it was called the No Fuckers.
Yeah.
You said that he's quite a nice guy, and I followed a lot of his work and so on.
Yeah.
But he still cannot express himself fully because he has family in Russia,
Yeah.
and that is still something that's not completely switched. It's like people like, oh, but my family might be in danger. But if this 100,000 other Ukrainian civilians die, that's okay. That's but my family, it's like they can be threatened, they can be thrown in prison if I say something wrong. But 100 Ukrainians dying a day, like couple, that's kind of
Yeah, yeah.
really
I
bad.
asked him to be on my podcast, and he said no. I mean, and I even told him, let's not talk about Ukraine. Let's just talk about life in Russia, whatever. Like, let's stay clear of the topics dangerous to you. And he still said no. So I'm guessing he wants to avoid these topics, and this is a little bit for me like hiding away.
That is
I
the
don't want
ostrich
to
position.
offend. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I will offend in your regards.
I'll let
So
the offending
everything.
part to you,
So
because
yeah.
yeah.
So all shit can come my way. I don't care. So the point is that the ostrich position is pretty much the Russian society in a nutshell.
That's a
That's
very good
that's
way to put it. Yeah.
yeah. So they care so much about what's going to happen to them, what's going to happen to like their family members and so on, that they completely don't want to change it. Like once you not start speaking about what's happening and just say, okay, this reality is not real, I'd rather wait it out and expect someone else to solve your problems. That is when you're saying you're not taking responsibility. And the Russian society, in a nutshell, the so mentioned ostrich position is Russian society just don't want to take responsibility. They would say it's better for my husband, brother, or a friend being called into army forcefully, being caught on the street, giving some kind of rusty Kalashnikov, and then sent to die in Ukraine. And that is fine until it's maybe not some more people from my family. And that is never okay in my book, and I would never accept that. So I will be critical until the war ends, and I can get any shit towards my way. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, the thing is also like I ran out of compassion in like a few months into the war. I ran out of before that I tried to like see the Russian position, but then when you do this job, you see people dying every day. You watch these videos, you select these videos. I used to do a lot of video compilations of grenades and stuff like that. So I saw so many Ukrainians die, and I saw so many news about it. I ran out of compassion, and I became quite harsh about the Russian soldiers. And I got punished for it because people in the Western world who live in safe societies, they're open. They don't have walls. They're open to compassion. They're open to give their energy, like compassionate energy and opinions. But if you are so close to the conflict mentally, like I am, of course, I'm also in Estonia, not in Ukraine, but mentally I'm there, and I'm like seeing this death and suffering. Then it's hard for me to find compassion for people who choose killing like that. They have choices. They choose killing. I mean, they could revolt, they could go to prison, they could break their arm, they could run away into the forest like Estonian forest brothers, Latvian forest brothers. They choose to go to the army.
Yeah, and if you're coming to the Western, like if we kind of go away, a little bit away, if we're talking about the Western world, like why, one of the reasons why I started doing my channel, right? Because a lot of things for me, I'm not a military. I know you have military experience and you've talked with a lot of people that also do. Some of them are also like military historians and so on. I don't. I'm a completely civilian person. I never interacted closely with the military. I wanted to go study to be an officer, but my health condition does not allow me to do, like, I cannot run for shit. Basically, I just run out of breath. And this is obviously very important for the army. So I never made it. But I was never fascinated with the war stuff and so on. However, for me, a lot of the things are just obvious because that's what the Russians are, and that's what we should expect. Like, and this is the situation. And I have a lot of friends in Ukraine and so on. And I was kind of following the news. And then a couple of guys from my surroundings, the Danish guys, they was like, okay, so what do you think is going to happen in Russia? And I say, well, I think this is going to happen. They say like, well, no, I don't think they will do this. I say, What do you mean you don't think? And they start building some kind of logical chains that I was like, that is never how Russia is going to act. It's like something as silly as like,
They
they're
don't know
actually,
Russia.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, they're actually trying to, find the way how to drill for oil inside of Ukraine. That's why they invaded Ukraine. It's like, have you not listened what Putin said? Like, like he literally tells you, like, Putin is not a very smart man. He's an opportunist. He was very lucky, but he's not a very smart man. He's not a strategist. It's like, but he actually talked about everything that he believed. Like if whatever he said on the 24th of February speech about denazifying, demilitarizing Ukraine, whatever, then why would he then 2 days later address the Ukrainian military and say, overthrow your narcomanic Nazi government? Asking, because that is the level of delusion. And when people say like, no, he actually has this multi-step plan of invading
Oh
Ukraine and
God, I've
then
got
drilling
some,
for oil, and then it's like money. There we go. It was all about money. And this is like no. It's like Russians. Well, money is a nice bonus. Yes, it's obviously everyone wants to get rich, but that's not the main drivers for Russia. Like this is completely different, and they just couldn't get it. There's like, what do you mean? I don't get it.
I mean, people in the West also get these comments of like they see Russia as just a state on the map. But if you know Russian people, or Russian way of thinking, if you have spoken to some, like there's a bravado. The Russian way of being is a very, "Чё, блядь, чё не it's like very bravadic. It's like that, and this war is a perfect example of that. It's like you're gonna do something, bro. This is Russia, and people in the West are like, oh no, if we can talk to no, you cannot talk to such a person. You have to knock them down. Otherwise, they understand this language only, and it's not like oh, they have some big plan. Like you said, they're giving so much credit to Putin. Like he's a mastermind. He has 1 million steps planned ahead. No. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's failing in Ukraine. The special divisions died in Hostomel at the first day of war.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I gotta get a shout out. There is a person, if you want to understand for the Western society, to understand how Russians are thinking, I can only recommend you Vlad Wexler. He's a philosopher, and he has a very deep understanding of what Russians are thinking. And a lot of his takes about descriptions about the patterns of logic inside of the brain of a Russian or a leader within Russia has been quite accurate. And a lot of the things he said would happen actually happen. I disagree with him on a lot of points. Like I can definitely challenge him on here and there, but I think in that sense, in the core, I can definitely say that he's probably one of the better sources to look at.
Yeah, I agree. I've watched his stuff, and he's coming to the podcast like in a week or two.
Perfect. Say hi.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, again, generalizing. I cannot generalize. There are Russians that are completely different, that have discipline, that have work ethics, that have morals. Completely different people, but I've seen also a lot of Russians more than I see Estonians like that are with this bravado and the need to prove themselves all the time and need to be aggressive. Or do you understand what I mean with this like bravadic behavior?
Yeah. It's in Russian it's called bydla. It's being a little bit, or in Latvian it's urla. It's like being very, very like semi-aggressive, like always trying to dominate the area, always try to show that like you're not the weakest one. You need to be showed like you have the power, you have the ability to control.
That's not only the Russian state, but like Russian mentalities. The young men have it. They buy BMWs and they're like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And with regard to and this is something that I'm doing. So in academia there is a law. It's like there's a understanding of a default position. It's like, how do you think? Like, for example, my default position for the most of the people is like people are good until they're proven bad.
Yeah.
And I think like the way that I'm just approaching right now with Russians, like when we're talking about, you're saying generalizing, right? What am I saying is like I'm not only generalizing, I'm just explaining my default position. So I can find Russians, and I know many Russians that are, for example, also here in Denmark. That are excellent people, great.
Same.
They are gathering, they're participating in protests. They are gathering money to support Ukraine. They're trying to do their best to reduce the suffering. And they're like, whenever they're talking with, for example, my wife, they're saying sorry, like this is not me. And the point is that contrary to this person like this, a lot of them still right now are following this agenda of the Kremlin. And
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
why the default position is Russians are not very nice until I can actually verify that this particular one is good. And until the war is over, that's going to be rules of thumb, basically,
Ye-
for.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta agree with you. As much as I don't like it to be like that, and I don't like generalization, this war and me working on this war daily has gave me the same default position as you. Unfortunately, I have to say right now that if you're Russian, then we need to talk a little bit. But I'm very cautious. I'm ready. You know, if pro Kremlin comes out.
Cautious is the right word. Very, very, very correct. And
Yeah.
it's actually quite interesting that when we talk about Russians, do you think that it's part, like, this is a question actually I've wrote down. Do you think, from your perspective, as interacting and looking at the Western media and Western talking personalities, you can probably name one or two that just find some kind of interest in Russia, and I'm not saying maybe support Russian position fully, because those are kind of like, okay, like usually those are people are completely gone. But there are people that are leading, saying is like, well, Russia should be listened to. Russia should be appreciated for what it does. Like, how do you see that after 9 months of war?
Well, we have Lao Tzu, we have Sun Tzu, sorry, saying the respect your enemy stuff. Of course, you have to respect your enemy. But people are going way too far with it. They're giving way too much respect and credit to Russia. They're like NATO has America has always mechanized, designed their military to be anti-China and anti-Russia, their biggest enemies, right? And they have assumed that the enemy is as strong as them, and then they have engineered these huge weapons, new tanks, new choppers. The truth is, Russia doesn't have anywhere near the capability to match U.S. weaponry, and we have now the position where U.S. is 30 years ahead with its military capability because they thought Russia is here. Russia is actually down here, and they give them too much credit. And of course, it's good. You're gonna win for sure because you're stronger, but giving them too much credit means also fewer weapons for Ukraine because people are afraid. Oh, don't poke Russia. You know, look, I say right now, give Ukraine everything. Give them all.
Yeah. So do you think that is it because of some kind of innate inability of the Western leaders to just take a win, just to finally win? Because in my perspective, that kind of winning has stopped being part of the Western culture. It's all about semi agreements, semi positions. Like, people tell it's a win-win, but most often it's like
It is. It is. Yeah. I mean, the clear-cut winners were 80 years back when world wars were happening. You know, then there were winners and losers. But right now, it's yeah, gray areas all over the place. And I think in Ukraine also there's a huge gray area. I mean, Ukraine is currently like maybe slowly winning. Russia is maybe slowly losing, but it's all like, you know. Mm. I've said it before and I got punished for it. Uh, USA wants this war to drag out because they need Russia to drain slowly and slow enough for Russians not to do anything stupid, but fast enough for them to, you know, die basically as an economy and their position in the world stage to be diminished. And people don't like to hear that. Yeah.
well, people, especially people in US, don't like to hear that. Like, I've criticized US, and I've again gotten a lot of shit, but I'm staying
Yeah.
strong with my positions. I think reflecting on its own, on your own past and what the country did, like, it doesn't make your current situation as bad. Like, it doesn't mean that you live in a bad country or evil country, whatever.
I wouldn't
It
say
means
that.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's more about like, how are you reflecting on the future? Like, look at Germany. They reflected a lot of their past. and they're trying to build a better future. The problem is they probably reflected way too much, like
Yeah,
it gave Russia way too much credit.
another extreme is Germany. Like they were full militarized power in the 40s, right? Then the World War ended. Then the Americans educated them to be fully economical power. No military at all. You can do everything with economics. And Merkel's doctrine was to win wars with economics, right? No wars because we have gas and economics with Russia, and it didn't work. So
Yeah,
they have to come back.
yeah, the problem, it only works on a rational actor. That's the economics of rationality, right? But the problem is that not all actors are rational, and if you're working with an autocracy that is really literally in the name, it's built on the authority of a ruler, and individual people very often act irrationally. And this is the problem of the Merkel's approach. It's a great thing to do this rational approach, interconnected relationship, economic ties in between democracies.
In EU.
Because democracies, they try to remove a lot of these personal biases from individuals. Whereas an authoritarian regime is almost fully dependent on the personal biases of their leader, because if their leader if the leader of the nation thinks that Jews are bad, and I'm referring very well-known person with a funny mustache, so if he decides that the Jews are bad because he's authority, his vision is then projected throughout the whole country, and this is what brings disastrous consequences. Democracies have balances. Like you can say Jews are bad, and then the opposition party says like, this guy is a Nazi. What are you doing?
And it's got to balance each other out.
Yeah, a little bit. So this is an innate problem with trying to approach economics rationally and expecting that the authoritarian leader will be as rational as your democracy, because once that person, for example, is so rich, like Putin is, that he doesn't even understand the concept of money, that for him, whenever someone explains like, oh, I've spent like my 3 salaries to do X, for him, this concept doesn't even make sense. His money is just non-existent. Like it's just it's like X, like on his bank account is XXX. It's infinite.
Yeah.
So for him, understanding of like, oh, I spent 3 my salaries, what does it even mean?
He doesn't understand poverty. He doesn't understand suffering in a way that Russian people suffer. There's no connection. He lives in the clouds. There's no connection to the people who actually don't have toilets in other side of the Ural mountains.
Yeah. For him, it's a funny joke. The biggest kind of example of that, there was this. I think it was 10 years or so ago. There was like, people can either link it in chat or whatever. There was a presentation where Putin spoke with people from other parts of the country, and then there was a guy that asked, "Hi, can you please build us a road? Because we don't have a road, because like our cars are getting constantly stuck in mud, and they're just getting like we cannot get through the roads," which is a reasonable request. It's like, you're the president of the country, can you build us a fucking road?
Yeah.
And Putin to that just laughs and is like, well, if you don't have roads, why would you have a car? He's completely misunderstanding everything. So he's so far away from any kind of touch of reality that it's ludicrous.
It is. He's not even bringing it back to the Soviet times. He's bringing it back to the Tsardom, where the Tsar lived like the Western Tsars, like the Western leaders. I mean, very wealthy, and the peasantry was serfs in the 1800s. It was serfdom, and in the inauguration of the latest Tsar Nicholas, I think like millions were stampeded to death because they gave out free food. People only came to the inauguration to get free food, and they were so hungry and starving that they stamped people to death, and it was like it's coming to that, I think. There's no connection to your people at all whatsoever.
Yeah. There's this like people and like Russian word narod, which is the same word as per people, when it's referred to the narod, is very much often has the connotation of not maybe people, but rather a crowd. So more of a like this it's closer to meaning and emotional relationship to a crowd. So you don't see a lot of times like when they're addressing and they're saying like we're addressing our narod. So it's like this is the mass of people, like population of Russia, and I'm expecting some things from the population. They are not people. Each of them are not individuality. They're just crowd, a mass or something. So there's a lot of very different conceptual ideas that Putin is throwing around, and the worst part is that it is ultimately bringing only the worst for the Russian people. Whenever people say it's like, oh, but Russian people will suffer if they try to resist Putin. They have been suffering for 30 years for not resisting Putin. Maybe they should think about changing something.
They have been suffering in the 90s. There was Yeltsin. They were suffering, right? Then came Putin. It was still nothing. Like it changed for the better for a little bit, but it's like I give you candy, but we're still in a horrible position. It's not like you're my god now. They could have aligned themselves with the Western powers and became a fully fledged democracy. They had that choice. Ukraine made that choice 2014, and they're fighting for it. Russians never made that choice.
Yeah, I think it's someone, some historian that I've looked. I cannot remember the name. Sorry, but what he was explaining basically is that the collapse of the Soviet Unions for a lot of the states of the Soviet Union was the liberation. It's the freedom from kind of these chains that a lot of people and a lot of nations were bind together. For the Russians, because they were the dominant nation, they rather saw it as losing of territory. They saw that it detracted from there. They didn't really see them escaping the Soviet Union the same way as for example the Baltics did. So for them it was like, oh, we were this great Soviet Union and now with this petty Russia. They didn't see this, okay, finally we're not communist anymore. Holy shit, that was terrible. Like, no, for them it was like, oh my god, we were so great, we were so big, and now we're so small. Only one of the biggest countries, if not the biggest country in the world. Wow, so small. Assholes.
Yeah, the mentality, and we're talking. Oh, it's only the mentality. It's not the regular people, but it is. Again, cannot generalize. No, I have to say disclaimer. I know very good Russians, but there's a mentality even with people with minimum jobs in Russia that, oh, I'm proud to be Russian, and proud to be Russian means that we're gonna take over everything that is next to us, and I'm proud to be that. I felt that with Russians.
I mean, it's okay to be proud of your nation, right?
It is.
It's good to be patriotic. It's good to be, like people that follow sports are very much into that. Whatever it is, it's the in the economics, and I'm referring a lot of economics because my education is economics. So in economy, the concept of monopoly is pretty bad, right? And one of the anti-monopoly rules is, or not anti-monopoly, but like, for example, advertisement rules is like, whenever you're advertising, you can always say how good you are, but you should never say how bad your opposition is, competitors are. And it's the same, I think, can be applied to the being proud of your nation, being proud of patriotism, being proud of the history. And I think especially what should be the best is what kind of bad things or challenges you had in the past and how you overcame this. Like, so we can take, for example, the example of Germany is how terrible Nazi Germany did and how proud they should be that they were able to overcome this and become this nation. I was like, what it should not be is the saying is like, our nation is so great and we are so proud of it that all the other nations around us should suffer for it.
That's what the Nazis
because they're
did.
weaker. Yeah. And this is exactly where Russian kind of patriotism went overboard. It's like, yes, you can be proud of being Russian. It's good to be. It's a country with a huge history, with very rich ways of how it interacted. But once you start saying we are better than the others, that is a territory of a very grave danger.
But I'm glad you brought that out. That's what I mean. I didn't talk about this, but truly, I've seen pride in the people of Russian people's eyes, and this pride is also about the conquest of Ukraine. They feel like this, like we spoke, Russian mentality dominating the room, dominating your space, dominating Ukraine. This is a source of pride for them, which for me is a complete no-go. I can't.
I mean, I come from Latvia. We're pretty small. Like the only thing we can dominate maybe is couple jugs of beer every weekend.
Oh yeah, I can dominate that. Yeah.
So we're not really too much into expansion politics. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, I mean, Estonia and Latvia, right? Both of us, both of these countries never have been empires, never had huge lands, but we have another Baltic state, Lithuania, who actually has been the biggest country of Europe in some periods, a long period of time. So they have this history of being overlords actually, and I don't know if you know, you can actually a little bit feel it in their mentality. I'm not saying anything negative right now. I'm saying they have a lot of pride for their country, and I would
Yeah.
say more so than Estonians.
Probably, but I mean, I cannot say anything bad about Lithuanians.
No, no,
Like Lithuanians is
no
the
bad
closest
stuff.
thing to Latvian. Like it's impossible to say. Like
Yeah.
if I would be if my house would be on fire, and there would be like a random guy that says like follow me, I'm Lithuanian, I would like without even waking up, I was like
Say no
yes,
more. Yeah,
yes,
I'm
say
good.
no more, let's go.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Uh,
it's
I lived 3 years in America, and I never knew anybody from Estonia there, or never knew anybody from Latvia there. But I knew one Lithuanian girl, and there was a lot of similarities already. Like we got along. So and
nice.
and and 4 years has passed, and you are the second person I've talked to Latvia or Lithuania. So this is the regularity of the Baltic communication here.
Yes, but let's just say, like, actually, like compared to some of the southern nations of Europe, like I think our communication culture is a lot more chill. Let's
Oh
let's
yeah.
let's give it. Okay, sorry, I froze up for a second. I'm just saying that our communications are a lot more, how do you say, level-headed. We're kind of like, yeah, yeah, hi, hi, and so on. We're not going to be like, okay, a big party or whatever, and so on. I'm stereotyping really heavily right now.
If you think this is chill, I am a black sheep in the crowd of white sheep in Estonia. I'm temperamented. I don't fit in here. I'm like talking like that. Estonians. So what do you think about war in Ukraine? Level-headed, yes. This is Estonian way. Like they don't move eyebrows, they don't move face, they don't move hands. This is Estonians. Slow
Yeah.
people. Like I'm just a Slavic soul. I don't know. So I mean, if I would be truly like an Estonian temperament, I would not be a YouTube personality. No way in hell. No way I could do this.
Have you ever planned to be a YouTube personality, by the way?
Yeah, honestly, yeah, people. Oh no, no, it happened. No, yes, I wanted to be all my life. So it's the dream come true for me.
Seriously?
Yeah, I mean, since I was 13, 14, I started making YouTube videos, and ever since then, never stopped, and been loving it ever since. What about you?
No, no.
No.
I'm still not sold on it. Like as you said, like I'm not unfortunately doing things daily. I have my proper job, which is doing great, and I love it.
Mhm.
And YouTube was kind of just actually unexpected. It's like, and again, I think most of it is due to the topic. The topic is just being very popular. I think once this war is over, the people just like, well, this guy is done. Like he's not very useful. So I'm kind of like, yeah, I will do what I can because I am like at least 50% of whatever I'm getting, I'm sending to Ukraine, and the other money
Yeah, I
is
read about that. Yeah,
yeah.
you're.
The other money I basically just use, to pay for the channel upgrades, like, to buy some lights, to pay for the software that I'm using, right? I'm not really profiting that much from the channel.
But
I don't really.
I want to say, like, people. There was recently some advertisement drama all over the place, and honestly, if viewers are watching, also, I want to say it's okay if you profit from that. Like, you put hours in, you have work, you come home, you want to rest, you make this YouTube video. I mean, it takes a lot of energy. People don't know how much energy it takes. I'm saying this, it's okay to profit from it, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, I agree completely. I don't get me wrong. Like the fact that I'm doing it is just my own personal desire. Like people try to give me shit. I was like, oh my god, you're profiteering from it. I was like, who gives a shit? It's YouTube. It's a commercial platform.
Yeah.
It's like I'm doing here is technically business. The fact that I'm donating money and it's only because of the concept of my channel. It has nothing to do with any influence. If people really want to support Ukraine, you should go and support Ukraine, for example, on United 24 platform that is run by President Zelensky. Don't give money to a random YouTube person.
Oh no, yeah. If you really want to support Ukraine, pick UNESCO or whichever charities are like the biggest ones. Not a military blogger, definitely not.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that it's completely fine. Like it's not worth profiteering. It's just people doing a lot of job. Otherwise, they would be saying it's like, oh my God, like all the journalists that are filming or reporting on war. Wow, they're war profiting. No, that's called journalism.
That's their job.
It's a job. Like and making videos is actually surprisingly hard. I was thinking you just record and upload it. There you go.
And people don't understand that it's not even about the time only, it takes hours, but it's about the mentality. If you read the comments, it affects you. If you put up, it doesn't do so good. If it affects you, so it drains a lot of energy out of your day.
Yeah.
So,
I can only agree. So it's totally fine. I think you should again subscribe to Artur Rehi's channel because and this is so silly. Like I'm gonna talk for a second because when I watched YouTube before, I thought it was so silly. Like, why would people just do this and so on? But when you see this actually making an influence, that is when you're like, oh my God, this thing is actually important. Like, because we need to understand that the channel is a 50-50. It's a creator, but it's also the community. It's also the people that are watching. And people have like almost as important for the channel to be actually popular and grow as there are the creator that creates this video. So a lot of time, this one extra subscription, one extra like, one extra share someone on Twitter or their other medias is something that can just break it up. And then as more exposure you get, the more your channel grows, the more people watch your content. And it's super important if the channel is to become grown. And it's like, it's not for me to say, like I'm having almost 50,000 subscribers. That's like nothing. It's
really good work actually. I looked at your channel. It's wow, man, you're going fast.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But the thing is that it takes a lot of effort from the creator. Yes, that is very important. Like creator is obviously the person, but he's also just executing for the community. And what he's trying to say is trying to remind, like you cannot just say it's like, guys, you are watching this channel, like you're obliged to subscribe, like, and so on. This is the part of your kind of contract. Obviously, we cannot do that because that's a very shitty communication. It's like they just say, "What is this asshole?" And it's like, no. But reminding, saying like, "Guys, please help," because that is definitely important. And so I'm gonna end up this and just gonna say that be a good community, support your creators.
Man, this is so wholesome right now. This is a perfect ending message from you. And Ukraine Matters channel is also in the description below. And you guys, if you like this podcast, put it in the comments to say that, oh, make part 2. So we will make part 2. I like Latvian Estonian discussions or something like that. I don't know. Gotta think about the titles.
Yes.
Okay. That was great, man. My friends, I'll see you in the next podcast. Subscribe to my channel and subscribe to Ukraine Matters podcast. Bye-bye.